Welcome to a dialogue, different solutions to addressing Colorado's state budget needs. It's my privilege and pleasure to welcome you here today on behalf of the Colorado Area Health Education Program Office and the Central Colorado AHEC. We're happy that you could join us. Today, we're going to talk about fiscal policy in Colorado, and we're happy to bring to campus two well-known voices in Colorado, Carol Hedges from the Colorado Fiscal Policy Center and Linda Gorman from the Independence Institute. It's my pleasure to introduce Carol Hedges. She's a recognized expert on the effect of Colorado's Tabor Amendment. Her current research explores spending and taxation in Colorado in light of fairness, efficiency, and adequacy. Ms. Hedges has experience in the philanthropic sector and in political service with former Governor Roy Romer, the National Governors Association, and Governor John Carlin of Kansas. Ms. Hedges holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Public Affairs from Emporia State University and a law degree from the University of Kansas. Go Jayhawks. She represents COFPI, the Colorado Nonprofit Association Leadership Advisory Committee, and served on the Technical Advisory Committee for Governor Bill Ritter's Blue Ribbon Transportation Panel. Carol is founding member of the Steering Committee of the Colorado Civic Engagement Roundtable. It's also my pleasure to introduce Linda Gorman on the far right. She's the Director of Healthcare Policy Institute at the Independence Institute, a state-based free market think tank in Golden, Colorado. A former academic economist, she has written extensively about the problems created by government interference in healthcare and the promise of consumer-directed healthcare. A contributor to John Goodman's health policy blog, she is also a member of the Galen Institute's Health Policy Consensus Group and was appointed to the Colorado Blue Ribbon Commission for Healthcare Reform, where she co-authored one of the Commission's minority reports. Question number one. The current economic downturn and the current political climate have brought into focus the issue of what services we want provided by the public sector and government and how we should pay for those services. In simpler terms, the public dialogue is focused on two choices: cutting services or increasing taxes. From your organization's perspective, what is the best approach for addressing both the short-term and the long-term fiscal challenges facing the state of Colorado?
Our perspective on this question is that we are very practiced in the state of Colorado at cutting services. Over the last 10 years, the state of Colorado has grown from almost 700,000 people. We have 700,000 people bigger than we were 10 years ago. We have 70,000 more students in our K-12 education system, 35,000 more students in our higher education system, 2,500 more prisoners, and over 100,000 more people on our Medicaid program than we did just 10 years ago. In addition to that, we have about 26% more registered vehicles than we did just 10 years ago. But when you look at what's happening with revenue, the money that's coming in to pay for those services and to pay for the costs of those additional people in our state, the situation is very different. It's in fact quite flat in terms of collections. Now, former Treasurer Mark Hillman has prepared on his blog some analysis that shows, in fact, when you adjust for the consumer price index or adjust for inflation and you adjust for those population changes, the general population changes I suggested, the state is actually spending less money per person, per capita, today than we did 10 years ago. I only have 5 minutes, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going through the cuts in higher education and K-12 education, but let me assure you that we've made real and significant cuts in those areas. We've also had to accomplish those cuts not just because of the economic downturn that we've experienced in the last 2 or 3 years, but also because over the last few years, last 10 years, we've cut our tax rates. If you look at taxes per $1,000 of income, that is the amount of money we make divided up into units of $1,000, and figure out how much taxes we pay in income taxes, sales taxes, corporate income taxes, etc., you're going to see the same kind of reductions that I just talked about. For individual income tax per $1,000 of income, we pay about 12% less than we did 10 years ago, or actually a little more than 10 years ago, back in 1999. For corporate income taxes, it's almost 39% less per $1,000 of personal income. And for sales taxes, it's about 24% less per $1,000 of income than 10 years ago. Why do we choose per $1,000 of income? Because that's actually what we pay. It isn't a theoretical per capita amount, because when you deal with per capita amounts, you're talking about kids and prisoners and people who don't pay taxes, etc. This is a closer proxy to what your actual tax bills are. So we're actually paying less today than we were. And the other value of the $1,000 income calculation is that it makes up for the effect of the downturn in the economy or the recession. So during the recession, there's less income being made, and we're still comparing it. It is a way of smoothing out the comparisons between parts of the economic cycle. Based on all of recent polling, Coloradans are not in favor of more cuts. They support what we do in terms of education, higher education, roads. In fact, a majority of Coloradans believe that those activities in our state are underfunded. So we believe it is time to use the provisions of the Tabor Amendment, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, and go to the ballot and ask voters if they're willing to invest more in the things that really provide the foundation for their economy. And that is education, whether it's preschool or K-12 or higher education, basic health care services, basic transportation services, as well as environmental protection services, services that make sure that our agricultural industry is not only functioning but also monitored effectively, and the whole panoply of things that government does steps in where the market is not able to effectively and efficiently allocate services.
I would start by saying that government is not about services. In some sense, I read the question and said this misstates the issue. People don't have government to protect services, at least not in the United States. The debate is about whether government is what it's for, what powers it should have, and whether it is producing good value for the money, whether it is doing a good job of the services that the people let it do, or the things that people think it should do. Now, the old view of government, the one that sort of existed without question before the fiscal debate started nationally and in Colorado, was that government is always and everywhere benevolent. It does a fine job, and it's inseparable from the people, namely us. Okay, one of the things that drives me nuts is when I read newspaper reports going, well, Americans don't want anything to happen to their government, and therefore they should pay more. Well, that's not true. Government, like everything else, is an entity. It takes money in, it spends money on things, and like everything else, it should be subject to evaluation. The newer view of government is that government is a self-interested group of people that citizens hire to do specific things. Sometimes it does them well, and sometimes it does them badly. And so people who would agree with me, my view of all of this is that there are a few things that government does better than the private sector, but they are very, very few in number. And we can usually tell what they are if the private sector either isn't doing them, or if when government tries to do them, it starts costing more to do them than the private sector does. So what the Independence Institute is about is private solutions to public problems. So what the Independence Institute is about is private solutions to public problems. And as technology gets better, there are usually more private solutions to public problems, and things get better. Now, the things that government should do, therefore, change with technology. All right? The classic example is the radio spectrum. We used to have very heavy regulation of types of communication because, say, radio was the only thing there was. But as time has gone on, we have the internet, we have satellites and so forth. We don't need the kind of regulation and the heavy government agencies to do it that we used to need. Government needs to change over time. It can't keep doing the same thing mindlessly. Second thing is that what government exists to do, ultimately, if you think about it, is protect property rights, your rights to your life, your rights to your liberty, and your rights to your property, broadly defined as your estate. When government becomes too self-interested, it starts to imperil those rights, and that's when we at the Institute start talking about let's limit government a little bit. We know a couple of things from evidence out there, and that is, first of all, that low tax, low regulation, free economies tend to produce better standards of living and happier people. Where does that evidence come from? It comes from international experiments in the Soviet Union, the two Koreas, the two Germanys, free and unfree Germany, free and unfree Korea. And it comes from U.S. states. We can look at the budgetary position of California, of Michigan, and of Illinois, and we can see that a tremendous amount of human suffering occurs when government suddenly runs out of money because it's been profligate. And that we in Colorado probably do not want to go there. Now, maybe it's okay for you for your lifetime if you're fairly selfish and you don't care what happens to the next people who are going to have to pay up. But in Colorado, we need to do that. So what we need to do is remember that there has never been a cut in spending by government in Colorado. And we need to not look at spending from bogus positions like taxes paid per $100,000. If you have a population that's growing steadily poorer and you have tax rates that increase with income, then your population is going to be spending less per $1,000, and you need to ask why your population is becoming impoverished. And it may well be that government is overspending. So what we need to do is take a hard look at the Colorado budget from the perspective of not one more dime, and look for the efficiencies in government that can reduce spending and improve the programs that are offered, and also let people be freer to pursue their own interests.